So this is just supposed to be a general overview on how to do lighting on the creation kit. Um, I hope it's helpful for you. This is just stuff that I learned the past 2 years with working in it, and this knowledge will definitely be transferable to other game engines if you ever decide to pursue a career in game development. So I'm just gonna get started. Pat, if you want to start recording, if you haven't already.
Yeah, you're good to go,
Okay.
man.
Well, I'm first going to discuss the different types of lights first. First, we have our omnidirectional lights and this equivalent shadowcaster version of it. And we have a hemi light, which only has a shadowcaster, a spotlight, and a directional light. An omni light is a light that casts light in all directions. It's omnidirectional. Um, and they're useful for faking, bounce lighting, lighting the majority of your scene because you're limited to 4 per cell. So you really have to be careful with how many. Sorry, you're limited to 4 shadow lights per cell. You have to be very careful with how many shadow lights you have. You're very limited. So the majority of your scene is going to be lit with this type of light because they're very cheap. They're useful for lighting effects as well, and I'll get into that later. The second light is the Shadowcaster. Again, you have to be very careful with Shadowcasters because you can only use 4 of them. There can only be 4 rendered at a time. If not, you'll get crazy light flickering, and it just won't be good for you. These are mainly used in like the main focus areas of the scene. You don't want to be using these in like a torch, for example, unless that torch is in a very specific area, like a main point, like a desk where there'll be an item for the player to receive, or maybe you'll have a shadowcaster in a skylight or another similar location. They're also really useful for windows because you can cast a really nice window shadow across the scene. Just to give you an example of what these lights look like in the kit, I'm just going to show you. This is our omnidirectional, which have a set radius and they cast light in all directions, but they don't cast shadows. And then to go an example of our shadowcaster, this one is the same, except it does cast shadows. As you can see here, it's casting a shadow on the chest and on all the other assets in this room. And I use the Shadowcaster here because this is one of the main areas. There's going to be loot here and a variety of things. It's still in progress though. As well as I use the spotlight up here, which is also a Shadowcaster, because this is again a main area of the scene. I wanted people to I wanted to catch the eye here, so that's really where you want to use your Shadowcasters. So yeah, you have your Hemi Light. Again, this is a Shadowcaster, only a Shadowcaster, so you have to be careful with it. But these are really useful for affecting only very specific areas without having your light bleed into other parts of your scene. They're useful for windows in particular, and maybe lighting up. I don't know, say you have like a statue in one area and you want to light it up. I guess that would be a good use for this. I don't use these too often, to be honest, because there's another equivalent light that I think is better than this, but you could probably think of a good use yourself for this type of light. The spotlight is another type of shadowcaster. It's extremely useful. I use this light a lot for my skylights. This is very useful for skylighting and as well as window lights. I think honestly they're more useful than Hemis. I really don't use Hemis that much. The spotlights just tend to be a lot more precise for me, and that's why I use it here as an example. It's very easy to target these. Now, one thing about spotlights, and this kind of showed up in the level design channel, is they look a little glitchy and finicky in the creation kit, but this is just the way they're rendered. I'm guessing the reason why Bethesda has it like this is because it's more expensive to render it properly. So in the kit, I'm guessing they decided to not render it the correct way. That's just a guess, though. It could just be Bethesda buggy nonsense. Yeah, this is a really useful light for these types of situations. As well, there's also the directional light. The directional light, you can think about it like a sunlight. It lights the scene evenly in a set direction. It doesn't fade out. It just applies an even light across the scene. And you can use these in the kit. I did not know this, but you can. They're there in the interiors. They're non-shadow though. But still, I'm pretty sure you can find a way to use this, and I'll go into that later. So with light, the different types of lights covered, I'll go into lighting templates. Lighting templates are useful for applying set lighting values across several different cells, so you don't have to constantly be copying over different lighting settings. That would be a pain in the ass, so thankfully we have lighting templates to work with, and we could just apply the same settings across every different cell. This is what they look like. If you go to world data here in your special effect, no. If you go to your object window, go to world data, and then you'll see a tab that says lighting template, and this will take you to all the lighting templates in the game. There's a crap ton of them. Unfortunately, most of them are trash. Um, that's my personal opinion. But actually, you know what? I should probably run back. Is there any questions about lights before I get into lighting templates? Because lights are quite complicated. Is there any questions they can answer about lights? Mecha's typing, so I'll just wait for him.
What's a reason why you wouldn't have a light that casts shadow?
Does a shadow caster only cast shadows? No, it doesn't. It casts light and shadow.
So essentially, one thing I can also can I interject?
Yeah, go ahead.
Shadow casters, what they end up doing with those types of lights, once they hit a mesh, anything behind that mesh's side is not taking up light anymore. But because it's so resource intensive, the reason why we preferred Omni, the question that is being asked by Pat here, is Shadowcasters have higher restrictions in interior cells. We're able to use 4 per cell, where Omni lights can be used 4 per nitrite shape. So using your shadow casting lights properly and in the right times will give a much better outcome.
Yeah.
But we cannot exclusively use shadowcasters.
Yeah, that's exactly on the money. So yeah, we want to be mainly using the standard omnidirectional light. They're also known as point lights in other engines. So if you ever move to another engine, that's what they are. You want to use these most of the time because they're a lot cheaper, and you can really only use these for the majority of your cell. You can't use like 50 of shadowcasters that just won't run, or it'll just glitch the hell out. It's just not something you want to do. These are you probably what you want to be using for things like torches or smaller light sources that aren't so important, or just like just general light. That's the type of light that you want, and a shadowcaster would be used for these main areas that you really want attention on. I should probably go into the controls. I know Cioli went over this, but just in case anybody didn't watch Cioli's previous stream, I can go over it now. If you want to see the radius or the area of effect of a light, you can press L on your keyboard. And to show the lights, it's actually you press M on your keyboard, that will show markers. And to scale light, you hold S and then click and drag that light, and you'll be able to scale this light. As well as Alt S is, or Control Alt S is the brightness of a light. And you can go really overboard with this. It's to ridiculous points. As well, for shadow casters, a really important one is Alt B. That's for the bias. A lot of the times you'll have striping on shadows. And a way to fix this with shadow casters is to use Alt B to adjust the bias. Let me just make it ugly for a second. You'll get this sometimes. You just have that striping. You hold Alt B, click and drag on the light, and kind of push the bias out. You'll get rid of that striping really easily. Spotlights in particular, let me take this spotlight so I can show how you control them. I'm actually going to get rid of all these trees. God damn it. Yeah, trees are going to be your enemy in the level design, so good luck. Oh god. Okay, that's one downside to having really large lights, is that when you shift F, it doesn't really work properly. It just goes super far out. Okay, so for shadow casters, same thing with the bias for this. Alt B will control the bias. Alt S will control the scale again. That's the distance that this affects. And Alt S, I believe, will control the sort of radius of the light. So if you want to match it to the hole that you're casting from, that's the control for it, Alt S. You'll be able to, this black ring will mark out where the edge of that light will be. It's basic shadow light controls. Okay. Yeah, lighting templates now. I guess I can go to lighting templates unless anybody else has any questions for lights. Okay, I must take that as a no. Let's see here.
By the way, if they have any side questions in the lecture hall chat that does not pertain to lighting, I'll answer that in the meantime.
Okay. Interiors don't have a lot of... Oh. Okay. Good example of a directional light. This is a good example. I'm just going to use Go.Engine for this. Because they have a really good sort of icon or visual representation of a directional light. So this is how normally you're going to see it in modern engines. They'll have this little directional light object. This is not a positional light. It's not casted from a single point. It's casted in a set direction evenly. So as you can see, it's affecting this entire scene evenly. It does cast shadows though, because this is a shadow caster. You won't really work with this in the kit. It's not how it's really done. You have to type in values in order to get it to work. But in other engines, this is how it's done. That's just a visual example of what it is. So yeah, I guess now I can go into lighting templates.
And a real life example of a directional light is just the sun.
Yeah.
Or the moon.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. That is a very...
By the time they reach the Earth, all the light rays are parallel to each other, so it's just a single direction. But is anybody else not seeing the slides that he's on right now? Mine still just says the any light Shadowcaster.
Mine are fine.
I'm saying
Okay.
you might have to refresh. A question earlier, what you said, Isaac. You stated that a lot of Skyrim's lighting templates were trash. Is the lighting templates part of the reason why the entire dungeons and stuff like that have very flat lighting?
Yes. wait, are you asking that question or someone else asking that question, Pedro?
No. I'm asking more because students need to understand a little bit
Yeah.
about
I'm just
what goes
about to go into that.
achieving dynamic
Yeah,
lighting.
I'm just about to go into that because
Okay.
that's a very template and image space heavy thing. Not so much light types. I'm just trying to make sure that everybody understands the different light types before I move on. Are we all
That's
Are we
understandable.
all good with light types? Do we all understand so far? Guess so. Oh, Amicus is typing. Okay, we're good. Okay, everybody understands light types. Good. All right, so lighting templates. We're gonna make. I'm just gonna go over this with you. So lighting templates, like I said, they're used to apply general lighting values across different scenes. They mainly control the fog values, the directional light values, and the directional ambient light values. And so this property right here, ambient, this isn't really used at all. It's only used for this button right here. It sets the different directionals based on a single color. So if you want to throw together a lighting template really quickly without too much manual work, you could just set one base color here and just set from ambient, and that'll apply automatically the 6 different colors that you need. It would be better to apply them manually, but if you're feeling a little lazy that day, you could quickly do it this way. For fog, there's 2 different types. There's the near fog and then the far fog. The near fog is going to be closer to the camera. It's just going to be that a slight sort of general fog that's applied, not so, how do I say it here? It's right before the engine switches to the far fog. The far fog is what's applied in the distance. As you see, if I can zoom out over here with my template, let me actually apply my template here. Okay. With my template applied, you can see. No, you can't see. Shit. I'd actually apply my image space as well. Here it is. Here you can see how the fog is affecting the distance over here. You can't see it too much in the editor because for some reason fog doesn't really render properly in the editor, but you can see it on the effects. This is a good way, I guess, to show it. It's a little finicky in the editor. I don't know why Bethesda shipped their editor this way, but that's just the way it is. You really have to go in game to see it. But yeah, the distance, the far fog is what's going to be applied in the distance. That's the color that you want to, on your distant areas of the scene, that's what you want to set for that. For near, that's going to be more light. It's not going to be as harsh as the distant fog, but it is going to be a lot closer. And these are the values for setting the different distances. If you want to experiment with them, see which one you like. Power is how strong it is. The clipping distance, honestly, I'm not really sure what this does. I don't know if Cioli, do you know this?
Lighting templates are the one thing I don't really touch. I'm an image-based guy, so I don't have a clue.
Okay, so clipping distance, I have no idea. I'm not using it. But yeah, these are just distances. Near, again, it's just gonna be a very light fog close to the camera right before the far fog comes into play. So it's kind of like a blending technique. You can blend between and it kind of gradually goes onto the further fog. So power is going to be how much fog there is. So you could do like, I'm going to do like 5. Oh, did that just make it go what? Okay. I guess the smaller the valley, the stronger it is for some reason. What? No, that is actually that's confusing. I'm not gonna lie. That's actually very confusing. Might just be an editor thing, but I'm pretty sure that's what makes it stronger.
What kind of fog would you be looking at for, like, say, those Stavangard levels
What was that?
when you're fighting Alduin? What kind of fog settings, or like how would you recreate the?
Oh, the way they did the
fog from
fog
the,
effects in the Alduin fight is not
like
through
Stavangard?
lighting templates or the fog system. It's like they have NIF files that are like effects, and they have like effect fogs. Like here, let me give an example here. I'm just gonna search effects.
I did a lesson on some of the effects
Yeah.
a few months back. So fog was one of the ones I also covered. So it's a little bit of a difference, but they're both useful tools.
Like for
once you know
example,
how to
here's an
use them.
example. It's not exactly the one they used, but these are the type of like effects that you would see in the kit. This is the ones that they would be using. They're NIF files. So they're more objects rather than the fog that's used in the lighting templates. That's not what I'm going to be talking about here, because I'm just talking about lighting templates. But yeah, I think Ketawitch actually posted in the level design channel. I don't know if someone pinned it. A good fog effect that you could use. Do you know what I'm talking about, Pedro? I don't know if anybody pinned it, Pat, if you know.
Was a big fan of Mist as well as fog. Mist was actually quite useful in my dungeons.
Yeah, Mist is really useful.
Yeah. I believe there are some fog ones there, but there are some good and some bad. So, again, like a lot of things in the CK, you're gonna have to figure out what works best for you, what just details the scene the best, and in the end, tweaking will be necessary to bring out the best product.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so the fog that's in the lighting template, as opposed to the effects fog, a lot of the time that's used not to look like literal fog. It's used to blend the distant terrain.
Yeah.
And in a dungeon, it would be like there's a lot of dust in the air, so the further away you're looking, the less you can see it, or it just turns everything into a flat color the further away it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. That type of fog is mainly used for depth and making sure things don't look like flat and there's no depth in the scene whatsoever.
It's also good for obscuring stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for the explanation.
No. Yeah, thanks for that. I don't know who that was. Thanks. That was a really good explanation. I'm gonna show off the directional. This is the directional light in interiors. So by default, the direction is gonna be 0. So it will apply. Hopefully, let me see here. Go to worlds, cells. Apply my template here. Oh, and if you want to have your templates affect all your settings, you need to make sure you inherit all these properties here. In the cells tab, world cells, that should open the cell window. And if you go to lighting, check all these inheritance properties, and it'll inherit all those values. Let me see. Okay, yeah, that's working. That's working. It's applying. As you can see, this is the directional light in interiors. So it goes from 0 all the way to 360 degrees, which will take us all the way back here. So if I want it to be casted from the bottom, I'd do 90 degrees on the Z, as well as, and then 180 would be all the way to the left or the right, depending on which way you're looking. It would be on the other side. And top would be 270. It would be a top-down light. So you could, I normally don't use this, but I'm talking about it because now I don't know, maybe one of you guys can find a use for it in one of your projects. This is how you could apply a general even light across your cell. You could also adjust based on the color how strong that light is, so you could darken it if you want, and it won't affect too much of the scene. Let me do straight grayscale. You could apply an even light across the scene if you just want to light everything up really easily.
I have a question. If we combine the X, Y, and Z values, can we get a specific angle that
Yes.
affects two
Yes,
sides
you
instead
can.
of just one?
Yes, you can. So, like you could have the light be angled. So if I wanted to do, let's say, 270, let me do select the color. Experiment here. Let me apply this. I believe you can. Let me check. Jesus. Let me see. Or is that not an implemented feature?
It might work a little bit better if you use non 90 degree values. So let's try something like 127
Yeah,
and
I'm gonna
38.
try right now. Okay, I think it is. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so it did work on the X and Y. Let me see if I can apply it on the Z. I'm not sure if that worked. It really doesn't look like it did. So I think you can
You're
only
still
use
using
one or the
90s.
other.
Try something like 38.
38
Try 38 for the Z.
for the Z? Okay. I'll try
Yeah,
this and see if it
non-standard might be
works.
the best way to go.
I don't think so.
I think XY can get the
Oh, actually,
best.
no, it
While
does look
Z
pretty
is...
angled, actually. It's not
Oh,
affecting this area. Huh. Okay, I guess,
there you
Is,
go.
is the reason why you don't use 90 degrees is so you don't get that angle effect?
what?
As the reason why you don't use the 90-degree angles so you can get that angled effect?
I mean, I don't know, Petro, you want to answer that?
Mathematically speaking, if we go in 90-degree angles, we can actually end up just canceling out things in different rotations.
I
So
see.
if we look at the rotation XY, if Z is in a 90-degree angle, the rotation of XY really won't matter that much. And vice versa, if XY is at specific right angles, Z is not really well used. It just becomes with something like lighting, where it's an even kind of distribution. Rotation at 90-degree angles can be a little bit odd. So having non-90 can sometimes give you more unique outcomes than what specific 90-degree angles or pi halves radians stuff will give you.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, you can angle it. Alright, cool. So I was correct. We were correct about that, Pedro. That's good. I thought for a second that maybe I was wrong. But no, I was right. Okay, so this is, yeah. Yeah, you can angle these lights. So that's generally how that's directional lights and interiors. It's really weird. I don't know why it's like that, but I'm sure you can find a use case for it. Now for directional ambient values, this one I use all the time, and this is going to be really easy to show you. This one I know won't break, and I'm 100% familiar with it. So let me turn off my directional. I'm just going to set it to black. That essentially would be off. So for your directional values, let me just set all these to black actually. These values here will cast a specific light color in a set direction. This is one of the cool things that the creation kit does really well, surprisingly, compared to most game engines. Most game engines only let you pick one ambient color for every direction, but creation kit actually allows you to set multiple. So a good way to show this is with the sort of translation gizmo. So here, for example, if I wanted to affect the z-axis, which is this axis right here, I would use the z plus and the z negative values. So z plus would be the direction the arrow is going up. So that would be casting upwards, so that light would hit this bottom here. So I could add a green light here, just for a quick demonstration. Let me add the green. As you can see, it casted the green. What? Did I apply that? Nope, I applied that to the X. God, I'm tired. I'm sorry, guys. Please forgive me. This is a lot more rough than I planned. Here, it's applying to the bottom of this barrel because it's being casted in this direction as well as the rest of the scene, as you can see here. And we can combine different colors now. Let's do, I don't know, let's do purple or something for the top, or magenta. I will apply magenta to the top, as you can see. And it's the same thing with all the other directions. This is X positive, so when you set the value, it's going to cast on this side of the barrel, and then X negative is going to cast on this side of the barrel. So let me do that very quick and show you guys. I'll do red. That's casting on X positive, this direction. It's the same thing with the other direction. We'll do orange this time, more of a neon color. That's orange on the X negative. We'll do blue in here. And then we'll do another type of green. Alright. So yeah, that's how you apply different colors to different directions, and you can see that's affecting my entire scene. This is just basic directional color settings. You could really go far with this though. Like it's really actually surprisingly pretty advanced, and you can really make your scenes pop with just these different settings here. Now, the one thing to keep into account: lighting is not opaque; it's transparent. It gets applied. It gets mixed in with all the other assets in your scene, so it's not going to look exactly like the color you picked. That's one thing to keep in mind, and it's also going to blend all the 6 different values that you set. So as you can see, it's kind of blending between the colors. It's not exactly a perfect version of what I picked. Like this green.
This is how you make a burrow look like a gaming PC.
The green is blending with this yellow. I don't even think I picked yellow. I think I picked orange. That's a perfect example. It's not like perfect. It's blending them all together. That's something to keep in mind. Specular was never fully implemented. You can look on the Creation Kit website, on the wiki. It says Bethesda has never fully implemented this setting. So unfortunately, this does nothing. Not even the Fresnel doesn't work either. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a shame, but well. That's lighting templates. If you want to set like a really dark, contrasty sort of scene, you'd want to set your colors to be very darker colors, a lot more dark. A lot of the vanilla interiors are relatively bright and or flat looking because their templates are so bright. The directional ambient values that they choose are really freaking bright, and that's why they're so flat looking. But if you set them all to be darker, you can get a little bit more of a realistic look in your scene, get a little bit more contrast, as you can see I did here. Obviously it still looks like shit because it's this RGB gamer gamer scene, but everything's a lot more contrasty now. I actually want to undo this, but I think I might have screwed my template over. I don't know if I saved. I could try restarting. Hopefully I didn't save. That would suck. Is there any questions about lighting templates so far? Anything in particular? I'll be glad to go over things again. I know that I'm not like 100%, so I might have gone over something too quickly. So if anybody needs me to go over something again, I'll be glad to.
I might have one thing, but I'm not sure how easy it is to answer this for you. But I knew about the settings and stuff, but I never used these much. So I wonder if you have general tips on how to actually effectively use light templates, like general tips on how you should use them, things you should avoid, and things you need to keep in mind, etc.
Well, I would say for how to use them, you really want to look at the world space, and whoever your lighting artist is for your team, you want to work with them, and you want to definitely sample colors from the world space, or take colors from the world space, or to match the specific region that your interior is in. So you can't have one lighting template for the entire world. It's gonna, like, if you have a really cold cave and you're using a very warm set of colors, that's just not gonna work. It's gonna look like trash because it's not matching the actual environment. So when you pick your colors, really make sure that it's matching, first of all, the landscape that the cave is in, the region that it's in, and the climate, the biome. A very easy way to do this is literally, if you know your lighting is semi-final in your project, go to the world space in game, take screenshots without an EMB or any lighting mod. Make sure that you're using your project's lighting, and sample the colors from that scene. You can sample the darker areas, so like the shadows, those colors in the shadows, sample those and use them in your directional ambient values, and that will give you a very good look that will match your project. Then again, I would say use darker colors for ambient, because you will, once you start getting to those brighter colors, everything starts looking flat. So if you don't want that flat look, you really need to use darker values because you don't want to have too much ambient light, because then everything's just going to go away. All the contrast in your scene is going to go away. Everything, all the depth is going to go away, besides the fog, of course. Oh, there's a crash.
That makes sense. Thanks.
What was another one that you asked? You asked if there was there anything else that you asked?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Oh no, general do's and don'ts, I suppose. But you've already kind of covered that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a big don't. Don't make them too bright. That's just a don't. I mean, you played Skyrim. I'm sure you've seen some interiors that look really flat.
What, you mean all of them?
Yes, all of them. So yeah, that's the good general tip. Bethesda did the don't. They did the don't, and they paid for it because the game looks extremely flat. Let me go back here. I actually might have ruined my ESP for the project. Oh well. I'll revert the changes later in Xedit. When you're working with templates on a project, another thing is make sure you don't do it in the ESP that you're working on yourself. And I know that's probably a general idea or a general sort of rule, is that if you're adding new things, do it in like a separate ESP, not into one that's going to go into the build directly without the whole approval process. But who knows? Maybe somewhere out there, someone will try to add templates in, and it could cause issues. So yeah, add your templates as a separate ESP. Get them approved. Save yourself the headache. Also, another rule: don't make templates and don't do lighting until you know your assets are final, because the color of those assets are going to affect the lighting template. Because like I said, lighting isn't opaque. It mixes with all the colors in the scene, including the textures of those assets. So if you have a very gray looking scene, like there's a lot of gray textures, that will affect the look of the light, and you have to compensate for that. You don't have to use lighting templates too. You could do the lighting, like for example, if you want to experiment with lighting and you don't want to go through the hassle of adding a lighting template or getting it approved, what you could do is you could just do all these settings in the cell tab. So here you'd have your directional ambient settings here, your fog and ambient color. You still have your directional there too. So a lot of these settings are here. The templates are just things that your cells can inherit from very quickly. I guess I could go into image spaces unless. Oh no, what's happening here? What's happening in the lecture hall
I
chat?
tried to explain the X, Y versus Z thing we were doing with the lighting.
Oh, okay.
I was talking about how, like, if you look at the image I posted there, the circle itself, like the base circle without the Z, is basically a normal radian graph where a full 360 is 2 pi. So 306, like from 0 to 360, you can set that around, but based off of what X and Y relate to in terms of that angle, sets where Z's starting position is.
Okay.
And then what happens is Z's angle is derived from the angle in between the starting point and the 180 opposite of the XY grid. So it would be a orbit around, if we were doing XY 160, it would be 160 and 340 would be that arc around there. And depending on the angle, we can create equivalencies from both sides. So based off spherical units, you can actually have two equivalent values that you can submit in the CK that will give you the same result.
All right.
But it becomes more restrictive once you start dealing with 90 degrees and
Yeah.
270.
All right, image spaces. Image spaces. You already touched on this Scioli before, but I'm gonna do a quick overview again. So eye adaption is just you can think about it how it's how long your eyes adapt to different brightness settings. So you'd see this in, I think Legendary had a more extreme effect where if you looked at the sky it was really bright for a second and then it'll kind of tone down the brightness as your eyes adjusted, and it kind of fakes how your eye adjusts in real life. It's a little exaggerated though in games, in fact a little too exaggerated. Yeah, here eye dash speed, that's just going to control how fast that happens. The strength is how strong that sort of brightness difference is. Don't set this too high, it's kind of unnecessary. You don't need too much eye adaptation. It's one of those effects you want to go very subtle with, in my opinion. You don't need too much. Bloom blur radius, this is for bloom. Bloom is like applying a sort of glow effect to lights. You can kind of see it here. This has a little bit of a glow. So this is how much that glow sort of separates itself from the sort of emitting object, or the sort of bright object. So I could increase this by like 10 or something, and I don't know if you guys saw that. Let me actually increase the intensity here. Let me go crazy here, so just to show off, this radius affects how much that glow sort of spreads from that original source here. So if I wanted to do like 12, as you can see, everything's just really blotchy and blobby now because it's such a big radius. You don't need that. This is another effect that you want to go really subtle with, in my opinion. Like 0.5 is good, just to have a little bit of it. Removing it entirely is kind of lame. So just having a little bit of bloom adds a little bit to the scene. It's a lot of lighting things. I don't know if you're really catching onto the whole trend. It's about being really subtle. Don't go too much. Whenever you go too much, it just looks bad. And that's what Bethesda did a lot. They just went too much with a lot of the values. You want to be very subtle with a lot of these settings, and that'll give you a really nice image in the end of the day. The white, the higher this is, the less white there is. From what I've noticed in my experience, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, any of the other level designers. In my experience, that's the way it behaves for me. So if I set this to 0.5, it's a lot brighter, as you can see. If I add like a 1, it gets the white in the scene isn't so strong. Let me set this back to 1, back to where I had it, and 0. If you just want to tone down like the wider parts of your scene, you have like that's how you would do it. Sunlight scale, this in my experience, this hasn't really done anything for me. I'm not sure what it's for because it just doesn't seem to affect anything. I've tried messing with it like crazy. Just doesn't happen to do anything. Scioli, I know you're the image space guy. I don't know if you know what this does.
This is an exterior thing, not an interior
Okay,
thing,
so it doesn't matter.
I believe.
Okay, so it doesn't matter for
It might matter
interiors.
actually if you have the sky thing enabled in the cell settings, it might matter, but I've never actually
No,
noticed it. So maybe it does, maybe
I
it doesn't.
tried already. It
Yeah, it
doesn't.
does work. It does with the end skylighting. It doesn't.
No, it doesn't. That's another thing. So yeah, sky scale is how bright the sky is in an interior. I would say go easy on this as well. You don't want to go too bright. It's just gonna. I mean, you can go really bright, especially if you want to create like a very dreamy looking place, kind of like Shadow of the Colossus. I don't know if you played that game. Like it has really bright skies. I guess you could, if you want to simulate that effect, you could do it. I tend not to go overboard and just do something very subtle like that. Saturation is the overall saturation of all your colors in the scene. It's by default it's 1. I like to add 2 just to give it a little bit of a boost in the color. Not too subtle. tint. You can tint the entire scene a specific color. I do like to add a tint, especially if I'm trying to match the landscape. You can help sort of push all the colors in a specific direction with the tint. But again, you don't want to go too overboard with this because you don't want this. This just looks like shit. Yeah, so I found that a value of 0.05 or somewhere around there is really where you want to be. You don't want to go too harsh with this. Your brightness is again general scene brightness, but this isn't whiteness. This is just overall brightness for all the colors in the scene. You could set it to 1, which is the default, I believe, but I actually like to tone down the brightness just a little bit. Contrast controls how contrasty the entire scene is, like how contrasty the colors are. So as you can see, this is just really heavy. This is just to show you what it does. Makes everything super contrasty. That's just unnecessary. I just keep it mainly at the default setting. I don't usually have a need to do this unless you want to add just a tad bit of contrast in some cells. I know the vanilla game does use this sometimes, especially in a lot of the darker dungeons. They use the contrast so you could see things more clearly. But yeah, in my experience, you won't need it too much, except for those specific situations. Now, depth of field, the strength is going to control how strong that is. I'm going to set it to like 20 for now, just to show an example of how this works. The range is let me see. Do like 13. Oh shit. Oh man, close it. Okay, let's do 1, then 0, and then if we do 600, range seems to be like the strength of the depth of field. Like if I set this to a high value, it kind of pushes out the depth of field. Distance is when the depth of field starts taking effect. Strength range kind of pushes this out a little bit. So if I set it to 10, the depth of field, since I have such a low distance, it's affecting pretty much right on top of the camera. But if I set the range to higher, it'll kind of push out that depth of field. You could use this to kind of like blend that transition. Pretty useful, especially if you want to get that sort of dreamy look again. But since this cell is not that type of cell, I'm just going to set it to something very light, like a 0.2 and a distance of 1300. Your blur radius again is the same thing. It applies. It's how much blur is applied to the different objects in the scene, similar to the bloom blur radius. It's just how strong or how far that blur affects from the object itself. That's image spaces. Let me set that to the cell very quick. Oh man. I actually have to speed up because I am running out of time. So I also wanted to cover, let me see, how different lighting templates, assets, and image spaces affect which lights you should use. So every light has a color, and like I said, the light colors mix together. They're not opaque. So you have to keep that into account. Some lights will look way too heavy or way too saturated in certain templates than they do in others. So let me disable the spotlight very quick. This will be the last thing I discuss. So right here with this warm template, you can see this is just a little too strong. It's too saturated for my taste. If you look at the Alec here, orange flicker. It's just right in my opinion for torches and things like that. But that's just with this lighting template. Once I change this, you're gonna see that the story changes completely. And this is another quick tip for you, Cioli, since you were asking about template quick tips. If I change the dwarven lights and then another image space like the default cave image space, you can see that the story changes entirely. Look, this very saturated orange light now becomes the best light for this cell. And this becomes way too digital. It looks like a LED light or something like that. It doesn't look quite right. This now becomes the best light. So you need to watch what your template, what the colors in your cell are, what the colors of your assets, the colors of your template, and the colors of your image space. And take that into account when choosing different lights and when making your lights and setting those colors. Because with colder cells, you're gonna need more saturated lights, and with warmer cells, you're gonna need a lot of desaturated lights. Because if you have extremely saturated lights in a extremely warm cell, it's going to be too much. There's going to be too much saturation, and that's can be a problem. As you can see, another example of that digitalness. If I go to this hallway, this does not look like a torch. This looks like somebody's phone light or something. Yes. I think that is it. Guess I could show some effects very quick. Set up emittance. If I go to Riften, you see the Riften stuff. Let me find an interior. Right here. I guess I think this would work. There's windows. Is there windows? So I could show this very quick. Alright, right here. So emittance for objects like this, you want to set them, you want to go to the emittance tab and set your exterior light, and that will reflect the real world time and adjust the brightness and the color of the window for these types of assets. And for effects, just very quickly, go to my cell. For effects, you either want to use an Omni light that's near it, or you want to set up emittance in the same way that I showed you here. Go to the emittance tab and set for interiors. You want to do exterior lights instead of interior lights, and you want to do any of the FX light regions. So like for example, sunlight here is really good for caves, and sunlight white is also really good for caves. There's a few other good ones there. You can experiment with that yourself. Omni lights also affect the effects as well, and you can watch Bethesda tutorials for that, but I am out of time. I can't show you that. I guess if anybody has a last minute question. Jesus.
I have a last minute picture to try to explain what I was saying, but I'm almost done with it.
Sorry.
People are loving your pictures.
Oh man, I'm so sorry. That should have been a lot faster, but I'm running on very a minimal amount of sleep right now, guys. So that should have been a lot better. I'm sorry about that. I really do apologize. I would have been way better.
That's good.
If I had the sleep.
Important info. You did it good.
You did great.
If you guys have any questions, though, I'll be glad to answer them. Send me a message. I'm not afraid. Don't be. You see I'm fucking up still. Don't be afraid to message me here, because I'll respond to you as soon as I can.
Any level design students or anybody even just interested in getting into level design, it is a discipline where you having somebody to ask for help is really, really valuable. So please use the teachers. Like the level design teachers here are here because they want to be DM'd.
Yes,
So,
yes. I have actually annoyed people by the willingness to answer questions and help.